Hi, this is Ms. Sherbin, and we are doing the guided instruction for Lesson 21, Competition and Selection, and it's found on page 109. Feel free to pause if you need to open up your books to that page. You should have it in front of you. And remember, you can pause, rewind as much as you like, as much as you need to. So, if you remember Lesson 20, we talked about natural selection and we talked about selective breeding and genetic engineering, and those were some ways that organisms change over time. And today, in this lesson, we're talking about we want to be able to explain why some organisms survive and others do not. So last lesson was the how, and this is the why. So you can learn why some organisms and species survive and others do not. So our vocabulary, as always, is up on the top. Competition occurs naturally when organisms try to use the same resources. And what are resources that organisms might compete for? What are some resources that organisms might compete for? Think about it and see if you're right as we go through the reading. Extinction is the disappearance of all the members of a species from Earth. So there's no more of that type of species. And an endangered species is the danger of becoming extinct. Right, meaning that it will no longer be on Earth. And we've been working and talking about endangered species in class. So now we're ready to read. Okay. Competition occurs when some organisms try to use the same resources in the same place at the same time. That sounds important to me. I'm going to highlight that. And I'm going to reread. Competition occurs when some organisms try to use the same resources in the same place at the same time. The organism may belong to the same species or different species. Organisms may compete for water, nutrients, light, space, or food. In a forest, trees compete for sunlight. A tall maple tree with a broad leaf can make it difficult for a shorter trees to get sunlight. At the same time, when the tall trees are cut down, as shown below, other plants such as grasses will begin to grow. The competition for sunlight, water, and space has been eliminated. So here we see that the grasses can grow because there's no tall trees blocking the sunlight, right? And broad leaves means wide leaves, okay, which then block out more sun. And if you think about it, right, here we have a picture, another picture I wanted to show you, not the same one over here, but we can see that in this open space, all the shorter plants seem to be getting more sunlight because the other trees are not there. There's a clearing. You can see that there's some small saplings grown there as well. And here we have this whole paragraph was talking about examples of competition. And as you can see from this picture here, this is from different species. Right? We can see that we have all these animals are going to compete for the zebra carcass. Sometimes we might have competitions with the same species, like two lions competing over a mate, or territory, but competitions for other resources. So that word nutrients is things you need to survive, right? Like vitamins, nutrition. All right, that brings us to our next page. Sorry, we started from the bottom. Here we go. Oops. Sorry. PowerPoint. Okay. Now I'm going to continue reading. When members of the same species compete, Those with certain traits are more likely to survive. Foxes with a keen sense of smell may find and catch prey more easily than foxes without a keen sense of smell. Right, that word keen may be unfamiliar with some of you. Let's use our context clues to figure out what keen means. It says if they have a keen sense of smell, they may catch prey more easily. So keen in this context means sharper, stronger, what else do you think it could mean? Okay. Foxes with a keen sense of smell survive longer and have more offspring than other foxes. The trait of the keen sense of smell is likely to be passed on to offspring. Over time, changes in the inherited traits of a population build up. After several generations, members of the species may look very different from their ancestors. So right here, over time, changes in inherited traits of a population build up. After several generations, members of the species may look very different than their ancestors. To me, when I annotate that, that sounds a lot like survival of the fittest and natural selection to me, what we just talked about. Continuing reading. An organism's survival depends on its ability to sense and respond to its environment. Survival of the fittest. A keen sense of hearing allows deer to hear predators and escape to safety. When an oak tree detects light, its leaves grow towards the light. This helps the oak tree capture more sunlight. Sometimes an environment changes. Some organisms in the environment may not be able to survive the changes. And to me, that sounds like that vocab word that we were talking about in class, selection pressure. Right? Changes in the environment that affect how it survives. Extinction occurs when members of a species die out. So there's a vocab word for us. Extinction occurs when members of a species die out. Okay, I highlighted that. Fossils are evidence of extinct species from the past. Today, the destruction of habitats is a major cause of extinction. Filling in wetlands and cutting down rainforests can lead to the extinction of species. Some species are considered endangered species because they are in danger of becoming extinct in the near future. So there's my other vocab word, endangered species, because becoming. So something that makes it endangered is that it might become extinct in the near future. And if you remember in class, we talked about endangered species. Let me bring that down so you can see that. We talked about some will become extinct, and there's a line of which ones are most endangered to becoming extinct, and some, like right over here, they only exist in the wild, to being very threatened to, we gotta keep an eye out for them because they might be. And here it said fossils are evidence of extinct species from the past. So most famously, we have the dinosaurs, right? The dinosaurs, we have fossils. We know they existed. We know they don't exist anymore. But there is a huge fossil record, not just of dinosaurs, but many other species. So that's what I mean by fossil record. So now it's time for us to go back and to answer some of our questions. All right, so here we go. Our first guided question is, what is competition? Again, I can use up here my definition, or I can go over here. We also saw some pictures. So I found that competition occurs when organisms try to use the same resources. Competition occurs when organisms try to use the same resources in the same place at the same time. I like that. So competition is when organisms need and or use the same resources at the same time. Competition can be between the same species or different species. So remember, I got that from the examples of competition we read. Feel free again, just a reminder, you can pause at any time if you need to. Next question, how do plants compete? Well, we talked about how they need sunlight and how these grasses are able to grow because these trees were cut down. But that's not the only thing they compete for. Plants compete for resources such as water, space, and sunlight. Next question. And this doesn't leave us much space to write, so bear with me. What are some resources that foxes might compete for? So again, over here they talked about foxes a lot. And we can also infer some resources that foxes might compete for are prey. And we talked a lot about the prey over here, how the sense of smell can help. But they can also compete for territory, space, and mates. All right. What evidence shows extinction has occurred in the past? So I looked over here, I found extinction. Extinction occurs when all the members of species die out. Well, how do we know they existed if they're not here, right? Well, fossils are evidence of extinct species from the past. So I'm going to write that above. I'm going to put a little circle so you can see that that answer goes here. Some evidence, I'm flipping my question, restating it. Some evidence that extinction has occurred in the past are fossil records. What is an endangered species? Remember, you can pause anytime. So what is an endangered species? I'm going to restate my question, putting it here. An endangered species is one that is in danger of extinction. That could go out forever. Okay, so now you guys are ready to answer questions. And the vocabulary questions are found on page 110. I mean, the questions, not vocabulary questions. 110 and 114. So there's just a few words that I know you might have difficulty with. The first one being keen, which we talked about, stronger, sharper. Okay. Someone with a keen sense of smell can smell a lot of things, probably much better than somebody without a keen sense of smell. Next one would be moss. Most of you guys might just need a reminder, this rock has moss. Okay. Next vocab. Number 5, they're talking about sand dunes. Sand dunes are little piles of sand. And this is a piping plover. You didn't need to know what piping plover was. It told you it was a bird in the question, but I thought I would just show you that these live in the sand dunes. And spindly, tall and thin. So here they're talking about radish seeds in the question. Here are radish seeds. These are upside down. They grow. The radish grows in the ground, and then they grow stalks, and they were talking about tall and thin stalks. All right. Feel free to always email me if you have any questions. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if it was. If you have any suggestions, what we can do to make it better, always feel free to tell me. All right. Good luck, guys. Don't forget to answer the rest of your questions from 110 to 114.